Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Critical Commentary. I'm Taylor, and today we are going to be doing a review on The Little Mermaid. And I have my special guest, Ken, by the Fire podcast host. She is going to be our mythos extraordinaire, our duo commentator. Hello, Ken. How are you?
Hello, hi Taylor. I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. Yes, I mean, By the Fire podcast is all about mythology from across the Black diaspora, and it just ties in so well with Halle Bailey, like an African American woman, playing a mermaid, and there's so much to talk about. I mean, when I was watching it, I was just like, okay,
Yes.
pointers. So yeah, thank you for having me, and it'll be really cool to just delve into the mythology side of the film and mermaid lore in general.
Yeah, we definitely will be spending a lot of time getting into that. But I
Yeah.
guess like before we get into the mythos stuff, just tell me what were your overall feelings after seeing this movie? Because I don't know about you, but I
Yeah.
like could not keep myself from like letting that inner child come out like the whole time I
Yes.
was in the theater.
Oh my goodness! Like literally, I cried really like quickly in the film. I think it was Part of Your World. I just had tears. I just streaming down my eyes, and like even after I left, I have a soundtrack of like Disney soundtrack playlist on my phone. So when I got home, I was just listening to like all the music, and I was just like,
Yes.
oh, imagine being in a fairy tale. So I just felt like the whole like magicalness of the film, like the whole thing of like, being a mermaid and wanting something that you just can't have, that's literally like impossible. Like, let's imagine mermaids, mermaids are real and everything. The whole thing of wanting to be a human, like, Ariel, what are you doing?
Right?
Like, your dad had a point. Like, there's a reason why we stay in the water. But oh goodness, no, it was so lovely, and the singing, oh, was amazing, and the actors were amazing, and yeah, I truly loved it. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Did you see it like with a special screen? Because I know a lot of people were like, I gotta go see it in Dolby
No.
so that they could get like that full experience.
Oh goodness, I actually wanted to, but I think because we saw it quite quickly, we saw it on the second night. We just went to see what was available, which was like a normal screening. But I did actually want
Yeah.
to. I know like this 4D now with like the water and the like just the mist and everything. That would have been so cool. How did you see it? Was that with the special
I
screens?
was in the same boat. I ended up seeing it like the second night, and at
Yeah,
that point I just had to get what was available.
yeah.
Like I remember being in line and this older woman and her granddaughters were behind me and they did not buy their tickets in advance. And it was
Oh,
so like it broke my heart because I think her grandchildren were like 13 and then I think the other one was like 8 or 9, and you could
yeah.
see that they were like so excited, and she just had no idea that movie was going to be as big, and by then it was sold
Yes.
out, and I was just
Oh
like,
goodness.
maybe you can go to the next one. Like at
Yeah.
first I was like, maybe I should
Yes.
give them my tickets, but then I was like, the inner child in me was like, no, you need to
No.
see it.
Me. It's so weird because like similar, but we booked our tickets online and we went to the second to last screening. So this was, I think, during the week. No, it was a weekend.
Mhm.
Around the screening was 10:15 at night, and when we booked the seats, it was empty. We got there and the place was full,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing kids, and I'm like, isn't this past your bedtime? How are you here? Like, the the whole film finished around 10 to 1 in the morning, so we were still, yeah. So it was obviously, it's a long film, so we were still watching like deep in the film after midnight. We were still sat there, and I just thought,
Yeah.
are they not tired? I got tired. I think I'm just getting too old. I was watching it, and I was like, wow, it is late.
I bet. Yeah, no. I know we were kind of talking about like as far as, and this is definitely not going to be a negative review because I feel like both of us agree that this was probably our favorite of the
Yeah,
like live
live
action,
action. Oh
yeah,
yes.
of like the
Oh
Disney.
yes. Oh,
And I still stand by that. I think there were like
yes.
moments where I almost felt like I liked this version more than the
Yes.
animated, like just being able
Mm.
to see her with the dolphins and like kind of her
Yeah.
peeking between them, like that was awesome. And
Mm.
that scene with the shark, like it was almost
That was
like
so
shot for
good.
shot the same. Yeah, yeah. But it
Yeah.
just, I was like nervous. I was like, Oh gosh, Ariel, but
Yes.
we were definitely talking about, as far as our one gripe was Kiss the Girl and the lack of backing
Oh
vocals.
gosh. Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, side note, just to like go back to what you were talking about, with like comparing it a bit to the previous film. Honestly, I hadn't watched it in a while, so
Hmm.
I sort of watched it with fresh eyes.
Okay.
The live action film where I knew of the iconic films, iconic scenes, I knew the storyline, but I actually forgot a lot of things that happened. So I forgot about the shark scene. I forgot, when Ariel was going towards Ursula's lair, just the whole thing about like that whole journey to the lair being like perilous. I forgot about all that. So from my perspective, it was sort of a fresh watch of the
Okay.
film, which was quite interesting. And yeah, oh yes, so the singing, the backing vocals. You know what it is, right? And I'm so bad at. So I think Alan Menken. I forget the names of the like composers.
I
I think
think
Alan Menken
Mencken,
is
yeah.
still, yeah, he's still like doing. I think he did this one as well. I love that traditional '90s sort of way of composing, which was like you had the backing like vocalists. I mean, I was watching an interview about Hercules, and they sort of were. It was a bit unconventional to have gospel choir because they had
Yeah.
the muses, but they also used a choir. And at first, that idea like wasn't liked even by the composers. But then they thought, you know what, let's just like change it up, and it worked so well, and it's still
Yes.
remembered today. Um, so I think with this film, we know like the back end vocals of Kiss the Girl, even like Under the Sea. Truly, in the animation, they incorporate so many of the other like creatures. You got the bass, and you got the blowhorn, and you've got the blowfish, sorry, and how they like link it to the blowfish blows the horn, and it's like I think that was the only thing I thought, I think I missed that.
I know, I totally know what you're
Yeah.
talking about, like with the blackfish singing, and you just hear her doing the
Mm.
ah like in
Yeah.
the background. Like a lot of that was
Yeah.
gone, I think. And for definitely for Kiss the Girl, I noticed it the most just because I remember when I learned that song as a kid, I was learning a lot of the I was
Yeah.
learning all of that part. So I was like doing it in the chair and
Yes.
not hearing it being done at
I
me.
just
And
think,
so
what?
yeah,
No, legit.
I definitely do feel like the couple next to me was getting a little annoyed with me by the end. They were just like, this girl's getting way too into
Can
like
you
doing the
sit down?
karaoke. Right.
Yeah.
Lin Manuel Miranda, I'm sorry. And I don't know like if he wanted to strip it for like
Mm,
just I don't know for sake of CGI editing or what, but I definitely agree.
mm,
I felt like there were just parts that in the music, the interaction with the other creatures was kind of part of that chorus and like what
yeah.
made it so much more fuller because it was so much more interactive. And so it definitely
Yes.
felt yeah, I missed it. I felt like okay, this is where I could see people being like, I miss the original, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, it was like the acting of Hallie and like her crazy chemistry with the
Yes.
actor that played Prince Eric. I'm totally blanking out on his name right
No.
now.
Oh goodness.
It's like Joshua
No.
Bauer, I think.
And he's
Is
British as well. Oh my goodness. I feel like I should know.
Howard.
Jonah. Yeah. Jonah Howard King.
Yes, Jonah Howard King. There we go. Yeah, they had some crazy chemistry that just
Oh yeah.
like definitely I think made a lot of the changes that they did to kind of make the story more modern. I think it just made it
Mm,
work because I
yeah.
was a little I don't know if this was something that you were like nervous about, but when they kept saying, "Oh, we're modernizing it," I was like,
Yeah. What does that
what
mean?
what does that mean, like where is that going to go, and like just the fact of like the pull away in Kiss the Girl being Hallie instead of Eric or being Ariel instead of Eric,
Yeah.
I thought that was like interesting, but it still showed
Very.
that there was like this tension going
Yeah.
on between
Yeah. But it
them.
was from her.
Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
like not being totally sure, but also because like they changed and added that like caveat to the spell where she can't remember, and I was just like,
Yes.
okay, this is like, I think
Yes.
it made it work, you know.
I know with the modernization as well, like they gave Eric his first sort of like a want song. You know, he was sort of in a similar situation as Ariel, where he was trapped within his responsibilities, within the confinement of being a royal, but also just not having that relationship with sea creatures, which we'll definitely go into that and where that comes from. You know, his mum, Queen Selena, was saying, you know, what are you talking about? How is a mermaid ever going to like save you? How can you love a mermaid? And yeah, he just felt, and even wanting to become an explorer and things, that was a no, and that was quite interesting to see, because you don't really, that they definitely didn't touch upon that in like the previous one. So
Yeah.
I did appreciate that. And you know what, Lin-Manuel Miranda, you did all right with the Scuttlebug song. I was sitting there, I was watching it like, that's him, isn't it? I was sat there
Yeah.
like, you've done it again.
I am not gonna lie,
uh,
it was jarring to have Aquafina do it initially, but I
Aquafina.
somehow I ended up being like a scuttlebutt. Yeah, it's definitely something that during the viewing I was masking that I was horrified, but I
Yeah.
was also kind of like, oh, it's a little bit catchy. He's
Yeah.
hitting me with these catchy, like half rap
I know.
performances of his.
Oh
Yeah.
goodness. Oh goodness. Done it again. So
Yeah.
yeah. Oh goodness. It
So
was a really fun watch.
as far as like supporting characters with the sisters, with Ursula, like were there any
Hmm.
like thoughts that you had there as far as just like how you felt like it was adapted? Because I do know that like a lot of people were super weird about Ursula's casting. There was a lot online
Okay.
just with people not liking the makeup because they felt like, you know, it wasn't as accurate as it should have been, because
Okay.
Ursula was like the inspiration for the original animated Ursula was a drag queen. So like,
Yeah.
did you feel like any of that stuff kind of mattered when you were sitting down and watching it? Did you feel like at the end of the day it's like these are kind of nitpicks or just like reasons for people to kind of give it a low rating on Letterbox?
I understand where they're coming from, but from like what I know about this film was that it was, they didn't even look at the animation for inspiration. They went straight to the original story. So
Yes.
people need to remember that the inspiration for like the writing, the costume, the makeup, hair, the songs wasn't the animation. And I think the issue is, you know, as adults, is that we have the animation as that's the original, when it's not. This film was inspired by that, and I think they wanted to, like, their changes, I mean, I think it was necessary. I think I understand where people come from, that it was inspired by like a drag queen, but I don't know. I really like enjoyed it, and the actress Melissa plays
Yeah,
Ursula.
Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah, she did like a really good job, in my opinion. I mean, like, I don't know what more people would have wanted. Maybe do they want like maybe a drag queen to play her? Perhaps
I
that could have been like kind of
I
iconic.
think
I
I
won't
think
lie.
that's kind of what they wanted. Was I think
Yeah,
people were hoping that they would cast a drag queen, like someone
yeah,
from RuPaul's Drag Race or something.
yeah,
But and honestly, I was like in the camp for that as well.
yeah.
But once I saw Melissa McCarthy's like
Mm.
casting and I saw her just be Ursula, at
She
that
did
point it just
really
didn't
well.
matter. Yeah,
She's a really good actress.
she did so well, and like
Yep.
I think where a lot of people may have been weird about Melissa McCarthy is because she tends to play similar characters, and I
Right.
get that, but I felt like she kind of lost herself a bit in Ursula. Like
Mm.
I was able to just see Ursula and not be as focused on who was underneath all that makeup and underneath all that CGI, because I
Yeah.
was like, whatever, she's funny, and I like that Ursula's funny. She's one of my favorite villains.
For me, like, it wasn't canon for her to necessarily look like a drag queen. I know like that was the inspiration for the animation, but I think I'm reminded of something like Hairspray, where Tracy's mum has always been a drag queen. Like that is the running gag, that she's played by a man, and not necessarily a drag queen, but usually like a man, usually a drag queen. That's canon. And if they were to make a remake and it wasn't, then you'd be like, okay. But with this film, if they wanted to make that directional change, it's like, so be it, I think. But what did you think about like Sebastian?
Yes, because I know we kind of
David,
talked about this.
David Diggs.
So it's actually really funny because I actually just finished watching Extrapolations, which is like a climate change, speculative fantasy, sci-fi fiction kind of. I don't even know how to
Okay.
really explain it, but it's a show. And he was so serious in that
Yep.
series, and so it was like I just finished that, and then I'm seeing him
The
be
Range.
Sebastian. Yeah, I liked it. The accent, though, was so hard to figure out what he was doing. And I know we kind of talked about, like, before recording, just the original voice actor who did, like, a Trini accent, correct? I
Yeah.
think that was what he did, even though he was of Jamaican descent.
Yeah.
I honestly found him still really funny. Like, he had the same amount of sass that the animated Sebastian
Yeah.
had.
Yes.
I know that, like, it might have looked weirder because this was a more anatomically accurate crab, but I don't know.
I thought it was really good.
I
You
thought
know
it was
what?
good.
No, I thought it was. I think I don't know compared to Lion King. I just felt convinced. Like I felt his emotions were conveyed like convincingly.
Yes.
Like when he was either scared of Triton or nervous, or if he was sort of like fed up. Or I saw that. I wasn't really I wasn't reaching out for it like maybe Lion King's like Simba being distraught that his dad is dead and he looks like now. like could you give us a cry at least? No, I actually was really convinced, and yeah, I think David like did the best that he could. And obviously I'm not from the Caribbean, so my opinion is like take it with a pinch of salt, but I did feel as though the mannerisms were like there, based on the Trini character he was trying to portray. For me, that's like an important thing that to be able to convey, especially when it is like a live action crab. You know, this crab isn't meant to be from like France or whatever. Like it's from the Caribbean, and how do you portray that in a film? And they did really well.
Yeah. Speaking of like the Caribbean, like how did you like those land sequences where, they're going through the market and they're dancing and they're eating and just like kind of, I mean, also like the Jodie Benson cameo with the flowers.
Yes. Oh, the fork. Yeah.
Yeah, the fork. Yes.
Gosh, yeah, and she was like, no, I thought it was so lovely. I mean, because I dance as well, so I was sort of like, oh goodness, like this is, I love the scene. And this is why I feel like I'm watching it with fresh eyes. I don't remember if they did that in the real film, in the animation. Sorry.
I remember. So it's been a minute since I last watched it. I watched it so much that like a lot of specific scenes are ingrained in my head, but not all of them. I know that they do go into the town, but I don't think they spend as much time highlighting their time in the town. I'm pretty sure it's just like part of their montage in the animated film. So I don't remember there being dancing, or at least choreographed dancing. Like what we saw.
I thought it was so lovely to watch, and it was just so cute. And with Jodie Benson as well, I was just like, oh my gosh, like just passing the torch.
You said something that was like super, super important about people like who had a lot of opinions about, the animated film versus this one, and how it kind of wasn't really a shot for shot adaptation of that. They do go back to the original story. And you showed me that amazing Twitter thread, and I can't remember the name of the account, but I'll make sure to post it on the screen. But they were kind of saying how they went through the movie, the live action movie, and were comparing it to different parts of like the original tale. So what, like, I guess what was your overall opinion about that? Like going back to the original source material.
I mean, one thing that stood out for me was, when Ariel was going through like the witch's lair, and you had all these like polyps trying to grab at her, and like the fire, and like showing how one, like they weren't just plants, they were sort of fish who were like maybe put under Ursula's spell, who were then now polyps. And I thought that was like really cool how they showed that in detail, because it was meant to show that it wasn't like an easy journey to see Ursula. And even I was disturbed by the dead mermaid on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and because I was just like, oh goodness, like imagine her seeing that. She probably has never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
Ariel, like I just can't imagine how she would have felt to see like one of her kind like dead in a place that she's going to. She's not turning back. She keeps going.
Yeah.
And I think like in the original like story, they really describe just how like dangerous this journey was, and like it wasn't meant to be easy. People, fish had been killed, mermaids had been killed. So I really like how they really like delved into that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember in that thread they talked about how that was part of the original story,
Mm.
where I guess the polyps must have like successfully killed that mer person that
Yeah.
we see the skeleton of,
Yeah.
and how like the Little Mermaid sees it and kind of
Mm.
is like disturbed by it, and so I did find that cool because I don't know, I the polyps in the animated film I think was their way of trying to make it a little bit less dark because
Yeah.
it was going to be for children. And I don't know if this is any less dark because I don't know, those polyps scared me in the animated
It
film. I
was. It
was
was just
like,
like
ooh.
I was like, oh
Yeah,
gosh,
I was like, I don't
get
want to
away
be
from
near
her.
them. But I definitely thought that that was like a cool thing. I also thought like the part where Ursula kind of kills Trident and he disappears or he starts to kind
Yeah.
of flake away. I thought
Mm.
that was kind of reminiscent of the original
Yeah.
tale because
Yes.
they don't just die and decompose, they become sea foam in the
Yeah.
original story. And so
Mhm.
it definitely felt like they were paying homage to that.
Yeah.
Were there other things that you noticed that were like maybe not specifically related to Hans Christian Andersen, but to like just the mythology of mermaids that, we haven't really touched upon yet?
Yeah. I mean, there was one thing that came like to mind for me was the whole siren song. That was a sort of motif that was repeated throughout the film, and she used her siren song to save Prince Eric. And even Sebastian commented that, oh no, she uses that to save him, when really we know the law is normally the siren song is used to hypnotize sailors who would then crash into the rocks and then to their death basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was like sort of a twist on that tale, on that superstition about siren songs, that she used it for healing. And I mean that's happened in previous mythology though. I mean if you think about I'm just thinking of one now, like Jengu. So the Jengu is a water spirit, and she's from the Cameroon, and she's someone who like uses like her voice as well to heal. So it wouldn't really be,
Ooh.
yeah. So it's not the first time where like mermaids do actually have like that ability that wants to heal people. So I thought that was really cool that they included that. Like she's not just some succubus who wants to possess and kill men.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like a really good feature like in the film for
Yeah,
me.
because when we were talking kind of in preparation for this review, because I feel like I've been prepping for this review for like almost months at this point.
Yeah, goodness.
I was definitely at the time kind of being like, oh yeah, like she reminds me of the Mami Watas, and you
Mm-hmm.
were like, oh no 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 no, that's a whole different type of creature. So do you
Yeah.
mind kind of like explaining like really what a mamiwata is, because I think that that's like the closest that a lot of, and I think this might also be like more so like Black Americans who don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have that real emotional tie to a lot of our own like mythology. So do you mind kind of explaining like what this creature is or what this spirit is, and kind of how it's maybe been, I think, romanticized now that it's coming over here to America?
To the west, yes. I mean, Mami Wata is, as the name suggests, like mother of the water, so as pidgin English, and so she's protective of her waters, and she's thought to bring good fortune through providing money. However, there are like tales of her literally being able to lure like young girls into the waters, and basically the girls like either don't come back or they do, but they're different now. So there's just been like sort of like rumors, just like folklore in the air about, you know, someone's sister was at the beach and da da da. But I find it interesting because sometimes it's also a way of just educating young children of not to wander off, because you don't know what's, especially water, you don't know what's in there. So like in the way they portray her, especially in Nollywood, which is, you know, the Nigerian movie industry, she's like very beautiful. She is essentially a succubus, and she even causes like men to be attracted to her, and then they walk towards the waters and then eventually drown. So she is the typical like mermaid you think about, not necessarily a mermaid, but the typical connotations of one, which is, you know, like a succubus luring someone to their death.
Would you say that there's like connotations there with like slavery, and just how like slave would kind of jump into the water as a way of like escaping going to the Americas? Like, is that ever been, I don't know, a part of it, or is that just kind of me pulling from from my butt?
Not necessarily from her, but there are like other like tales where like I think Yemaya, she is a Yoruba water goddess, and there are like, just tales of like, you know, enslaved people who would sort of make things for her, for the rivers, in order to sort of appease her. So there are like other like sea creatures who have that story with and that relationship with enslaved people, no, for sure.
This is why I was like, I have to have you on here, because just having that, I don't know, there's something about like folklore that I think has always just been so interesting, because it's our way of trying to make sense of the nonsensical, you know?
Definitely.
And just like how people at the time before we had these, and you could even argue that maybe our answers are not concrete answers now, but just like not having the same knowledge that we have now about things, and just trying to figure that out. Were there any other like moments in the movie that were, I think, also kind of maybe taking from, if not that specific folklore, just from either like it could go back to the Denmark, you know, parts of where the original story comes from, but like, did you see any other like aspects that were really important?
Yes, I mean, if you think about the theme of the relationship between humans and like those who inhabited the sea, so the sea creatures, there was, from both sides, from King Triton, from Queen Selena, Prince Eric's mum, they both had strong opposing views of each other. Triton's point of view, there was the humans who killed Ariel's mother, because she was also interested in like the land, and you know what happens if you see a mermaid, and she was killed sadly. But then if you think about Queen Selena's point of view, you know, she is hearing so many of her ships being shipwrecked, so she'd say, you know, be careful of the waters, you don't know what's in there, what's causing all this death essentially. So there was that violent divide between the two, and that's something that is definitely common even with mermaids from like the diaspora. So I think about someone like River Mama, and she is from Jamaica, so she is a mermaid, and basically she is thought to be again the mother of her sea creatures, and she is someone who like causes death, causes suffering for those who catch her fish, and of course that's just reminiscent of King Triton. And basically what she does is, if a human has good intention in their waters, which really like happens in the film. In the film, they're going to catch fish, or they're going to explore. If it's bad intentions, then she'll cause that boat to capsize. So that
Ooh.
is, yeah, so that's something that does happen in this film. And you think, how are they going to like reconcile, how are they going to come together? And of course it happens, but there is a point about what we do to our environment, overfishing, and there's rules about that, but they're so flexible.
There was like a moment right after the initial shipwreck where Prince Eric is like, I'm fine, I want to go back in the water. And Queen
Yeah.
Selena was like, the sea gods are angry at us.
Yes.
And I loved that. That gave me like Clash of the Titans,
Yes.
like Poseidon
Poseidon.
against
Yeah.
Odysseus. That it was very, that was like 100% where I felt that, because it was almost like, and I don't remember this being a part of the animated film, but this like, there was like reverence almost between, it was like they didn't like each other.
No.
But I do think that Queen Selena had this like somewhat level of respect, because she was like, I'm giving up trying to make our waters better. I just want to make sure that we don't get left behind as a culture. And so it was interesting seeing her being kind of like, I'm afraid of the water, but at the same time, it's the only way that we can interact with other cultures and advance. And so there was like this needing of like wanting of approval from the water gods. And I think that's something that I don't hear a lot of. Like when I hear a lot of mythology, a lot of times it's always the air or it's the earth. And so the understanding of the water and how important it is, I think, because now we can just get in an airplane and we don't have to worry so much about being on a boat, unless you want to go on a boat for like a cruise. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and when you're on a cruise, you don't even really know that you're moving half the time. It doesn't always feel like you're really on, like, in the water. So I just found that to be kind of interesting, because I think there's like this, I don't know, I've always found the water to be a mystical place. I don't know if you swim or not, but I've always just found it to be this weird, almost like, I don't know, I've always imagined it kind of like, not in the same way of like Ariel going to see Ursula, but that like going into the underworld kind of like vibe. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's really, that comes out a lot online, where we just don't really know what's deep in the water. Like, there's still so much unexplored. There's creatures who have adapted to never seeing the sun because it's that deep. Like, it's not that deep, but it is that deep. Like, they are so below the surface that they are blind because they don't have access to light. And then it makes you think, oh my goodness, how much more is there to see? I mean, just thinking about the sea versus space, I think people still believe that the sea is still like a really unexplored compared to like the efforts that we're doing for space.
Sailors used to see were really manatees that they thought were mermaids, and I'm like, I don't know how a manatee looks like a hot girl, but okay. But I do wonder, like, what if there were just creatures at that time where it was maybe, it's obviously a sea animal, but just gave a little bit more of that like vibe, maybe nothing that was specifically human-esque, but just something that was unexplainable, and that's what was the origination of this creature, and then it kind of moved into a more fantastical space.
I mean, because there's so many depictions of mer creatures in mythology from across the world, across the Black diaspora. And they do have their differences. I mean, I'm thinking of like Lucerne. So she's like Haitian, and she is like dark skin, and she has like long flowy like black locks, and like black hair that is kind of locked, but she uses a comb to constantly like comb her hair. And what I found really cool and sort of similar to Ursula is that she has a mirror that holds the boundaries between like the human world and like under the sea. And it's sort of like Ursula, because Ursula's able to see what's happening on Earth as well with her magic orb. So there's so many depictions of like mer creatures. It just makes me think it's from somewhere.
It
It's
yeah,
from
it's definitely
somewhere.
from somewhere.
Mm.
Are there any like sea creatures that look similar to Ursula? Because I know in the animated version, she's technically a squid because they couldn't
Yeah.
afford to put another leg or two other legs in there.
Oh,
I
is
don't,
it? So
yeah.
wait, in the live action one?
Well, in the live action one, I should have counted now that I'm thinking about
No,
it. I
because
didn't think to count.
she's apparently an octopus in the live action.
I think she's an octopus in the live action.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh right, so bless them. So they couldn't afford to add like the two more.
Yeah, in the like original animation, but I think
Animation is
they
expensive.
did
It is
it.
expensive, to be fair, and it was the
It
time. Yeah.
and they were hand drawing, so I can
Oh
imagine being like, "I'm
gosh.
sorry, y'all, you're not getting those
Yeah.
two legs.
You're getting the squid. You're getting the squid.
You're getting the
Oh my
squid." But
goodness.
are there like creatures or mythological like beings that
Hmm.
seem similar or have like similar anatomical parts to Ursula? And do they have like very similar characteristics in terms of her personality, like as a
Hmm.
witch, or are they a little bit different?
I mean, so there is the Lusca, and this creature is a sea monster from the Bahamas, and basically it's thought to be like half shark, half octopus,
Ooh.
and so in terms of like their body, they have they have the 8 legs, but then they have like a shark head, and apparently they can grow like over 250 feet. So they are very big, very big. So just think like massive Ursula, but with a
With
shark
a
head.
shark head.
Scary.
That's what I was imagining.
Yeah. Mannerisms, they don't have like a vendetta against anyone.
Okay.
They are just, I think they are just like, this is a creature. They're just
Okay.
sort of doing their thing in the circle of life that is under the sea. They don't really have anything against anyone.
Okay. They're just like very neutral, like
Yeah.
just the true neutrals
Yes.
of the sea
Of the
creatures.
sea. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about Hallie's hair. Hair.
Oh,
We can talk about her
we
hair.
we have to talk about her hair. I have never wanted to go back to being a redhead so hard.
I was like, yes, I feel validated. You can't really see it in the light, but I do have red hair.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. No, actually, so I don't have red hair, but I do have locks, and I will say I have cowrie shells
Oh, there
in
we
my
go.
hair.
There we
And
go.
I felt so validated seeing them. I was like, I need to go add more now. I love that they went with that sandy red versus the
Yes.
fire truck red.
Yeah.
Like, I also just love the fact that she had edges. Like,
Not edges.
like she had them just like,
Like,
ooh.
oh, like, how does it say slick in like salted water? That's what I want to know.
Right? I'm hoping there's just maybe like mer people are just
Yeah.
naturally more slimy or something, so
No,
it just
yes,
stays.
it just stays. No, I mean, they did a great job, and also like endearing to see her team of like black hairstylists doing her hair, because I know it would have taken like a long time just to maintain it,
Oh yeah.
especially with the under the sea scenes that she was doing, and I was like, wow, like look at you swimming, like they got you
Yes.
working, girl.
She
Oh my gosh.
I think she went to mermaid boot camp. Is that
Oh my
correct? Or
gosh. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think that's something that they said that she did as like in preparation, and it was more so to get that like this
Yeah.
part down. But like she had it down so well,
So
like
well.
especially that turtle scene when I
Yeah.
saw right before the turtles start moving,
Yeah.
you see her kind of do this with her body,
Yeah.
and I was
just
like,
thought- I haven't read the original, but watching this film, it's like this is what I expect a person who was inspired by the original. Like, I think the director like read it again, whilst like making this film, or the writers, and the fact that like she was meant to be like a teenager in like the original story. She's the youngest of the sisters, so I think like emulating that as well, that she's meant to be young and like innocent, like she really wants to be on land, and she'll do anything to get that.
Yes.
And we'll talk about like the oath that she made and the differences between the two.
The pact was different from the animated film In the animated film, she just signs her name on a contract and
Yeah.
then she's done. Do you mind kind of like describing how it was in this version and kind of the significance behind that?
Yeah, so this one, she actually had like a blood oath where Ursula takes a bit of like her fin and like throws it in like the like magic cauldron. So that's sort of like, this is how this oath is sealed. It isn't like just writing a contract. And I think in the original that happens, but also a bit of Ursula's blood goes in.
Yes.
In the original, like the story, I
Yes,
think.
I believe in the Hans Christian Andersen version, the Sea
Mm,
Witch adds her own blood as well. Like
yeah.
it's both of them kind of giving something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what just came up to my head like right now is that, like Ursula is King Triton's like sister. So I feel like, I mean, this might be a reach and a half, but like Hallie has like her blood in her, in a sense, because they
Hmm.
are like, that is her, meant to be her auntie. So maybe they just thought, well, you don't need to add like Ursula's one as well, because Hallie's like oath. I mean, not Hallie. Ariel, Ariel's like contribution like of her like blood like is enough, and I
Hmm.
quite like that towards the end of the film, when Ursula was telling like Triton, well, no, like this oath is sealed. Like, look at her fin. Like the scar was still there, so it's something that's like permanent. That was, I think, to take off someone's like fin from their like tail. That's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder if a lot of the changes and like the lack of the sea witch's blood might also have to do with intention too, because
Mm,
in the original story, the sea witch is also a very neutral character. She's
okay.
really not there to be a villain. Like she just
Okay.
kind of gives her this potion and is like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm like
Yeah.
terms and conditions are sealed. I'm good. Like go
Yeah,
off,
like
you
like
know.
any contract that we always agree to without reading the fine print, really.
Yeah, we don't see that as much in the Disney version is because it's like, well, it's not someone who's intentionally trying to help. It's
Mm,
someone who's trans there, like you said, there's that transaction between them, you know. She's
yeah.
like, if you fail, you're coming to me, you're mine now.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
maybe that's why we don't see it, but I did like that they kept Hallie's scar there. Oh, see, I'm doing it too.
Mhm.
Ariel's scar when after
So
she gets her
convincing.
scale away. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so hard
Yeah.
not to like they're the same person.
Fake.
but but no, I liked the blood oath. I think that
Mhm.
and I don't necessarily want to like add something that's not there, but I
Yeah.
think because at the end of the day the animated film is kind of in the Caribbean and this was definitely like more set in a fantastical Caribbean area,
Yeah.
that like the blood oath felt very similar to like hoodoo voodoo practices
Mhm.
of like kind of what that means. And I feel like when you say that and no context is added,
Mhm.
it always has a negative connotation, but it's like, well, no,
Mhm.
like blood is life, blood is what connects us, it
Yeah.
is the thing that we need to survive. And so there's a lot more neutrality there than I
Mhm.
think, you know, Western audiences might give it. But
Yeah.
I did like that. I felt like meant it meant more.
Yeah.
Um, and I know we were also talking about the changes in the lyrics.
Mhm.
How like right around the, you know, right at the end of the second act, going into the third act, before Ariel confronts Vanessa,
Mhm.
she
Yeah.
kind of sings that reprise of Part of Your World, but
Yes.
it's a different type. Like it's almost her regretting what she did.
Yes.
Were there like lines there? Did you find anything significant there? Because I know she says like, "What did I give to live where you are?" And like, who can I? What can I? Where can I go when I have no one to turn to?
Mm.
So like, what did you feel about that part of that change in the wording?
I mean, it was just a way to show like how distraught she was, and it was like like, needed, because she had that life that she wanted, and now she was back, like she didn't have it anymore because Vanessa was there and Eric was with Vanessa. So I think it was a really good way to show like her distraught. Like, what were you thinking?
I no, I agree. I think so. One of the like things that I remember a lot from the original story with Hans Christian Andersen is that for the Little Mermaid to be on land, she has to experience a lot amount of pain,
Hmm.
because the idea is that her tongue is actually mostly cut out. So it's like the pain
Um,
from that being gone, and then every time she walks, it feels like she's stepping on daggers. And so I actually liked that change because I think they probably were like, we can't really have her dancing and doing all
yeah.
these synchronized
Yeah.
choreographed dances and being like, ow, ow, ow.
Yeah.
But I think that they were able to again pay homage there by showing like you've given up your voice,
Hmm.
your power. And like, I know that Triton kind of has like a whole thing with her at the end where he's like, I'm sorry that you had to lose your voice for me to
Hmm.
start listening, or you didn't have to lose
Yeah.
your voice for me to start
Hmm.
listening. But I liked that way of showing pain for her.
I'm thinking about the scene where she's in the bath and she just come on land, and she's singing. I think it is that part,
Where she's
and
like
she
singing in
looks.
her head.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and she looks, which I thought that was really cool as well. We can. Oh my god, we got so many things to benchmark. Um, and she look. I thought it was an amazing detail. She looks to the side, and it shows the fish in their hooks. Part of the decoration on the wall was like her people dying and that being sort of like glamorized, sort of like, oh yes, look our fish. And then she, then goes underneath the bathwater, like sort of to have that familiarity of like being a mermaid, which it is different, like being in the sea all the time versus being on land. But then she sort of gets out of that funk where, no, I did this, I want to be on land. But it was very interesting to show, sort of the doubt of like, what have I done? I'm so out of my element. At the end of the day, does my dad have a point where I'm idolizing people who want to see me dead? That was a really good thing to include in the film because, like you said, it isn't all just like fairy tale and hunky dory. Like, no, like Ariel does go through a lot.
I just thought about it too. It's really interesting that the mer people did not find that cute on their side. Their idea, like
Mm,
the whole idea of Ariel having her little, collection, that
yeah,
was seen as
her shrine.
weird. Right. To have mementos from the other world, and yet
Yeah,
she's sitting in a bathtub and there's a painting
yes.
of them glamorizing their predatory nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to see that. Like when you
Yeah.
brought that up, I was like, oh, I didn't even think about
Yeah,
that.
the shipwrecks. They're very much like in a secluded area where
You don't go there.
you don't go there. You don't go there. She goes there, and Flounder's like, "Where you going?" And like the shark attack happens. So it's so different. Where it's humans are just leave them.
Yeah,
Very different. Like
yeah.
they don't think to encroach onto their world, and I think I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I can't think of any law where the sea creatures just try to encroach onto human land. I don't know. I don't know what it is about us and our just curiosity. We are on water. We're not meant to be on water. We can't swim. Like we can swim, but we can't be
Not that
underwater.
kind of
Like
swim.
not that
Yeah.
kind of swim. You know what I mean? Um, but like the humans again, like even in the film, they risk knowing that they could be shipwrecked. They go out. Like Prince Eric goes out every time, whereas the mermaids, the mer creatures, like they don't. They are very much they're meant to be. Just keep to themselves. Sea creatures keep to themselves. They love it. They love it underwater. They don't even want to try and explore the human world. I found that very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And you said before too, so I definitely want to go back there to the song that's in Ariel's head.
Yep.
So yes, I loved it. You said you did as well.
Yep.
What about it did you find so interesting, or just what made you kind of fall for that song? Because that was not a part of the animated film.
No.
That was a new song that was added.
That's something, yeah, something I remembered. I remember when she started singing, I was like, oh, okay, so we are good to get her point of view. Because I was thinking, how are they going to depict like her feelings? Is it going to
Mm-hmm.
be completely like reliant on action, facial expressions? But I still love that they gave her a voice even while she was meant to be like muted, and I think that means something. Like I think maybe it's sort of like a deep thing where she may not be able to speak, but she still has a mind of her own,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. I found it to be and like I don't want to say it's like Shakespearean because then it's gonna come off like I'm like auteur, but like it was Shakespearean in the sense that it was like a proper soliloquy.
Yep.
It was that like aside where we as the audience get to see more of her. Because yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you're about to have this character be silent for a good half of
Mm-hmm.
this movie, or at least for a
Yep.
good act of the
Yep.
movie. How are you going to just have her lean on body language alone as a way of like
Exactly.
conveying her messages? So I felt like her excitement in the back of the caravan when she's like kind of peeking up
I
underneath and
know.
the
I thought that
song
was
plays.
so
It
cute.
was
Oh
so
my
cute.
goodness. I was just like, yeah. No, that was like another tear moment where I just thought, oh goodness, I'm gonna cry now. Okay, I really just quickly want to talk about Vanessa's song. So
Okay, yes.
Vanessa's like in her room, and we see. I love how they did it as well, actually, with the actress and then like Ursula being in the mirror as well. But her song, I just thought, Halle range, because like Halle did her song, which was the la da dee da 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 la da da da, and it was just
Yes.
like la da dee, and I just thought, oh yes, show emotion through sounds, and
Hmm.
yeah, I really like that. I like that as well. That was a way of like portraying like it's meant to be like a lovely song, just love, yeah, just a lovely siren song, but it's been tainted by the character that is Ursula. Like, no, Vanessa's this beautiful woman who like could attract anyone and uses her beauty to sort of possess Eric, but through that music, and I love when people portray in film, when they portray like a scene, a mood via music. That was a way of showing us that look, she isn't who we think she's meant to be. Is very much like she's the bad guy basically, and
Hmm.
I love that they also used Halle for it, because it's sort of like a way of like she has Halle's voice, but it will never
Hmm.
Halle. She has Ariel's voice. I like how they use Halle's voice, but it shows it's like that. Oh my gosh, they used Halle's voice to portray that, because it shows that even though she has Vanessa has Ariel's voice via the necklace, it's not the same. The essence isn't the same.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
yeah,
was
I love how they
adulterated.
yeah
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the actor that played Vanessa ate up that scene with her
yeah
screaming laughter. Like, that laugh was so unhinged. I was like, oh, she has me scared. Like, I think I
yeah.
might be more
It was
afraid
good.
of like the disguise of Ursula
Yeah,
than I am of
I
actual
think I was
Ursula.
as well. Yeah, I think I actually found it a bit like a bit intimidating.
Before I let you go, like, is there, we talked about a lot. I know there's probably so many other things that we could have discussed with this film, but as your closing remarks, like, are there just anything that we haven't discussed that you felt like you had to mention before we go, that really stuck out to you, either about Halle Bailey's performance or just the movie overall?
Ooh, I think I just want to say that Halle did a great job. Um, she really did, and despite like all the the talk about like race bending and everything, it's so nice that she's getting so much support from like those who love like her, the film, her cast members. Yeah, I just thought it was really like good, and they just they did a really good job. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
I
how I feel.
agree.
Yeah.
I will say that kind of for those who want to be a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian, you got to go and see it, and you really got to go and see all those little girls that are
Yeah.
going to see it, because at the end of the day, it's really honestly about them. More Black girls into the pool, because we need y'all in the pool.
Yes.
Like,
Please.
teach your babies how to swim, because I do think that, like, that is something that as a culture it's been kind of taken from us. I hope it inspires other girls and other femmes, especially of the Black diaspora, to
Yeah.
kind of just regain our relationship with water and regain like our relationship with ourselves and our voices. And I'm just so glad that you were able to come on my channel and to talk with me about this, because I've been watching or listening to your podcast like since I think right before I reached out to you or I started
Yeah.
following you. And
Amazing.
I was just so blown away by just like how much research you do. And you were just teaching me so much about my own culture that I just didn't even know. And so like I had to have you on here so that your voice could be spread to other people who also feel disconnected in those spaces, especially with like our own mythos. So I just really want to thank you, Ken, for coming on the show
Thank
today.
you.
Is
Thank you for
there
having
like
me.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, of course, anytime. Are there any like upcoming projects that you're working on? Is there like a place where the audience can find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, listen to the rest of your podcast?
I am By the Fire Podcast. I'm on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you just want to listen to my catalogue, upcoming would be Volume 3 of Beyond the Fire, which is essentially a little like handbook of creatures from the Black diaspora, but just more stories written down, and that's used as sort of like contextual stories for a role-playing game, sort of like D&D. So even if you don't play the game, you can still read the books. Volume 1 and 2 and are out already on Drive-Thru RPG. Volume 3 is coming.
Oh, I play D&D, so you are just yes. Oh, I need that now.
We need more like just black creatures doing their thing and more like scary stuff. I just wanted to say as well, like, I hope this film, especially for like African American, just like children and creatives, I hope it expands their minds of like what storytelling can be and what how black people can be inserted in these stories. I follow a Reddit subreddit called Ebony Imagination, which has just like fantasy, but like of black skin, but of just black mermaids and black sea creatures and just like gods and goddesses, and these are people's creations that they make and share, and I'd love to see more of that in the mainstream.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Gosh.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And if you also want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CriticalCom with 2M's TV. And honestly, just again, please just from your home, please thank Ken for coming on the channel today, because this was the best. This is like exactly what I was hoping our recording would be, and then some. So I really appreciate this so much.
Thank you.